Mr. Mayor, I realized that the recording had been paused. So we're just starting to record now.
Okay,
Apologies.
thank
Yeah.
you. All right. So anyway, they're going to replace those boards as well as the CPACs with what are called detachment boards. And basically, without getting into all the gory details, each community that is policed by, well, sorry, each detachment of the OPP, with the exception of the traffic, so-called traffic detachments that patrol the highways around the GTA. This is like Downsview and Port Credit, for example, that don't do any general policing. But each detachment that does general policing duties will have a detachment board made up of representatives of any municipalities to which it provides service. So if you look at the West Parry Sound situation, we have 7 municipalities and the Hendry First Nation that are in fact policed by the OPP West Parry Sound Detachment. And so a board will be created according to this legislation that has already passed in the Ontario legislature. A board will be a detachment board will be appointed to, made up of representatives of those municipalities and that First Nation and some others. So, and they had originally asked us, just so you know, they had originally said we would like a proposal from each detachment, from the municipalities in each detachment area, as to how they would like to structure their board in terms of reference. They didn't, so it's not a cookie cutter approach, not a one size fits all thing, but there are some rules and guidelines, some minimum number of people on the board, maximum number of people, etc., and so on. So anyway, that proposal was supposed to be in by today, the 7th of June. But that's not a hard deadline, and there have been a bunch of questions that have been asked and so on. So that sort of brings you up to date on where we are right now. The existing West Parry Sound CPAC has had a number of discussions about this and has raised some concerns and questions. And I would like to ask Councillor McEwen to, since he's part of that group, to give you a brief overview of what those discussions and concerns have been.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor. You gave a pretty good overview of it. As you mentioned, the Office of Solicitor General, they've enacted this creation of the new detachment boards, Ontario Policing Service Boards. And the CPAC group committee, which I've been involved with, which has been ongoing for quite some number of years in West Parry Sound, with the 7 municipalities and First Nations meeting quarterly. It's been, I'd say, more of an exchange of ideas, information session between OPP staff, bringing back messages from the Solicitor General's office, and getting into budgets and such to a certain extent, where we had no control over. It was an information situation. When this was enacted, I guess the Solicitor General asked municipalities, and thus the CPAC group, who are representing municipalities, were asked to put out a response to a request for information. The information was to, as Mayor outlined, establish the say boundaries of new board. Sometimes there were overlapping locations where you had 2 detachments and multiple different issues. We were a fairly simple one in our mind with West Parry Sound, 1 detachment. The detachment area is pretty much within the West Parry Sound. And we felt we had a pretty good model to a certain extent, not knowing just what the ministry was going to come down with. And we don't know exactly what they're coming down with yet, although they've certainly said it's coming, it's in place. We'll have to make it work. I guess one of the things CPAC committee did express concern over, or some of the things we expressed concerns over were certainly size of the board, where the board would hold their meetings, for instance, was another situation somebody has to address. The administration of the new board, there's some questions around that. The expenses of running the new board, whether it be secretarial costs, keeping meeting records, setting up meetings, who's going to chair, and how we're going to run this new board. Honorariums would have to kick in a certain amount since we're bringing in some public expertise from the streets, in addition to councillors who generally are volunteers as a councillor representative at no extra cost to the Solicitor General Office for the OPP. So anyway, we're just waiting now. I guess we've sent in a response explaining, I guess, in essence, what we have now, and feel it is a working model if it works within the new parameters and the new design of the Solicitor General's information packages. We will see what happens. So it's in the works. We're going to have to live with it. Oh, one other thing that CPAC asked for was postponing possibly the initiation of a new services board and agreements and all that till the next council, which have some pluses and minuses, of course. Continuity is a big thing. You don't want to change your whole slate on, say, the new policing service board, as you wouldn't want to have with the CPAC, because you're carrying over a lot of expertise. It takes a few meetings to really come on stream and get feeling comfortable and up to speed with what's happening in the OPP world and what's covered under these boards. And it's quite complex, as you can well imagine. Our little portion of the budget is our big portion to us, $400,000 a year, and we're like the smallest levied municipality in West Prairie Sound. So overall, we're talking a heck of a lot of money for services, and to get an understanding of it, and to continue to take the message to the OPP, to get the message across that we want this, we need that. We're looking for more service and the best service we can get. So that's kind of what it's all about. But anyway, just an update that we are moving forward, and we'll try to keep council up to date as we get information on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just, I'll open it up for questions. I was just going to mention, at some point in time, all of the councils in West Prairie Sound and the Hendry First Nation will have to endorse whatever the plan is. So at this stage of the game, I think we have some issues around the size of the board and the need for, there are supposed to be some at-large public appointees to it, and some government appointees appointed under the public appointments process, and that would result in a fairly large board given that there are already 8 municipal representatives for the say the amount of real sort of police governance work that the board would be expected to do. But anyway, that's I'm not sure how quickly this is going to happen. At some point in time, the Solicitor General will come back to us and say, okay, here's a proposal. Do you endorse it? And the municipality, by the way, has the right to opt out and say, we don't want to be represented on the board. But that doesn't stop you from having to pay any costs that the board incurs you know, as far as the operation, this is for the, not for policing specifically, but for the operation of the board itself. Meetings, secretarial services, that kind of thing, those costs. You get whether you participate in the, whether a municipality participates in the board or not, we would get assessed from those costs. And I think it is in our interest to participate, frankly. So, but anyway, are there any questions or comments from councillors about this? It's really just a kind of an update on where we're at. If not, that brings us to 15.3. And that brings us back to the Campus for Care model that Don Carmichael spoke to us about earlier in the meeting. I'd like to read a proposed motion to you and see if we can get a mover and seconder. Whereas Ontario's long-term care COVID-19 Commission's final report has now been delivered and health system leaders in West Parry Sound want to be prepared for the changes that are expected to come. And whereas health authorities of the West Parry Sound District are working together, including the boards of the West Parry Sound Health Center, Lakeland Long-Term Care, and Belvedere Heights Long-Term Care, with a vision to provide the best possible solution to long-term care and health care for the seniors in our community. And whereas among considerations being proposed is a new model of healthcare, referred to as a campus of care, which essentially provides a continuum of care for the elderly to age in place, including, where appropriate, their own apartments, other independent or assisted living arrangements, as well as long-term care, all affiliated with and in proximity to local primary health care and wellness services. And whereas it is also proposed that the community of seniors continuing to live at home be supported by our vision of virtual care, which would include professional, home-based health and wellness care supported by high-speed internet services. Therefore, be it resolved that the municipality of Whitestone supports these initiatives and the collaborative efforts between the province of Ontario and the local stakeholders to develop innovative and improved care for the seniors in our community. That's the motion. Is there a mover and seconder?
I'll move it, put it on the table, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, I'm sorry, I took the wrong box. That's Councillor McEwen. Is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Gorham Matthews. All right, it is open for discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I guess the concern I have is that there are no dollars affixed to this at this time. It's just asking for support and collaboration between the stakeholders. And I guess at some point they'll be coming back with more of a, I guess, an assessment of it financially. We'll be looking at approving support for dollars at some point, I would expect, regardless of how much assistance we get from reworking the books and government assistance and all that. I just want to make sure that we're within our own fair share type thing, or as often happens with these provincial organizations, you're levied a certain amount anyway, so you have no say in the matter. But it's just a cautionary note on my part, or feel I have, to make sure we pay our fair share and that it is a proper calculation. It just seemed a little bit open-ended here in some respects. Could you comment on that?
I think, yeah, I can, and I'm sorry that Don Carmichael isn't still here because I would certainly ask him to comment. My sense of it is that they're simply looking for support from the various municipalities in the region that currently own and are responsible for the indirectly, for the operation of Belvedere. Just to say that we're supportive of this direction, and it's not really, I would say, not a new direction in the sense that, as I think you know, and as I think you heard from Dawn tonight, Belvedere is operationally already part of they're very tightly tied to Lakeland, and that has been a huge lever in getting getting the operation at Belvedere back up to snuff. Some of you will recall that if you go back a year and a bit ago, there was some negative news coming out of there in terms of staffing problems and so on. And that's why I was kind of complimentary of the work that the board has done to try to get things back under good management, and the the successes in terms of avoiding outbreaks of COVID-19 and such things has been very good at that at those two facilities. So I think we're fortunate that the operation did get turned around in time, but and it wasn't easy. But there's at least from the reports I have, it wasn't. So I think it's simply an opportunity for if people wanted to say, for example, well, we really want Belvedere to retain its current character and be remain a separate facility or something. People could say that. There is no, as you say, there is no dollar amount attached to this, but this motion does not include a dollar commitment. It's simply an approval. I see it as an approval in principle for the direction that the board is going to develop this model for the future. And as you heard Dawn say earlier, there's a hope that at the end of the day, not that we won't have any financial responsibility or any involvement in the operation, but that the costs that are necessary to make the transition to the new model will be largely underwritten by higher levels of government or private public partnerships that are facilitated by the government. Because I think if I think you can perhaps appreciate, if we had to do this on our own as owners of Belvedere, we would not be in a position to do that. We just, again, we're talking some pretty significant capital investment here. So anyway, it's not, I mean, if those assumptions that help from external sources will be available, if those assumptions are wrong, then this ain't going to happen. but I think right now what Don is looking for and what the board is looking for is support for the direction that they want to go. And I personally am in favor of it, but
well, I certainly support the direction they're trying to take us, as long as it doesn't change. It seems to be changing in the positive from what he's saying so far, heading toward this project. So anyways, okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, I don't so
Yeah.
much have a question. I'll just say that, I'm in favor as well as the direction that they're moving in. I think it's a sustainable way of doing things. I think we need more information in terms of what it all will look like before committing. But I'm certainly in favor of supporting the resolution and helping them develop more solid plan and moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gorham Matthews. Councillor Woods, any comment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in support of the direction that they're moving, but I understand where Councillor McEwen's coming from when it comes to what it's going to cost us at the end of the day. In listening to Don, it sounds like they're hoping to save us some money, but I would just like to, make sure we all really pay attention to what it will cost us towards the end. Make sure we're paying our fair share, like Councillor McEwen mentioned earlier.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody wish to amend the motion or do anything further to reflect these comments? I'm confident that this is not the last we're going to hear of this. It's not going to. I don't think we're at risk that anybody's going to come back and say, oh, well, you agreed to this. Here's what it's going to cost to ante up, because obviously no numbers have been put in front of us. So my interpretation of it is that we're not approving any, but it's up to the council. If the council wishes, you can make this subject to subject to further information on cost implications or something else of that sort, if you wish.
That would be a responsible little addition, I think, Mr. Mayor. Exactly what you said.
Okay, well, here's what I'll do. I'll suggest, see if this satisfies you. I'm going to support the words. I'm going to suggest that we insert the words "in principle" after the words "support." So, therefore, be it resolved that the municipality of Whitestone supports in principle these initiatives and the collaborative efforts between the province of Ontario and the local stakeholders to develop innovative and improved care for the seniors in our community, subject to further information regarding cost implications. Would that capture what it is that you would like?
Yeah, I think that would be more suitable. Thank you.
I'd be comfortable with that as well, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so I will read you just that last. I won't read all the preamble, but I'll read you the last paragraph again. Therefore, be it resolved that the municipality of Whitestone supports in principle these initiatives and the collaborative efforts between the province of Ontario and the local stakeholders to develop innovative and improved care for the seniors in our community, subject to further information regarding cost implications. So is that your motion? Mover and seconder? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine as a mover. Thank you.
Councillor Gorham Matthews, are you okay as the seconder?
Yes.
All right. I think what I'll do is I'll ask the clerk to read the roll for this vote, please.
Councillor Gorham Matthews,
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Woods.
Yes.
Thank you, and Mayor Comrie.
Yes,
That amended motion is carried.
thank you. Now, the next item is 15.4, which is a memo regarding draft by, well, it is just a memo, I guess. The draft, we're going to receive a draft bylaw. That's the proposal. And it's a bylaw for establishing and maintaining a system for the disposal of solid waste and recyclable materials within the municipality of Whitestown. So here's the motion, suggested motion, that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestown does hereby receive the draft bylaw, being a bylaw for establishing and maintaining a system for the disposal of solid waste and recyclable materials within the municipality of Whitestown for information, and provides the following suggested refinements. So we can suggest, if I can get a mover and seconder for discussion, then we'll see if there are some suggestions. And we'll get a review of what's in the bylaw from those who've worked on it. Can I get a mover and seconder?
I'll move, Mr. Mayor.
All right, you heard Councillor Gorham Matthews first and Councillor Woods second. So we have them as mover and seconder. Who would like to lead off this discussion? Is this Madam CAO, or is it our deputy clerk, or who's?
I'll get started, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
This is a little bit of history. The draft bylaw was something we were looking at last year in concert with the changes that were made at the landfill site. And we realized that we really needed a comprehensive review of the bylaw, which is why we're in June of 2021 and seeing the new bylaw. As you can see by the memo, there was a number of people that were consulted. Councillor McEwen and Councillor Woods provided input simply as an extension to the work they did last year with making recommendations for changes. We, of course, included bylaw enforcement officer Paul Rossiter. Public municipal prosecutor Paul Dre did a huge amount of work on this for us. Our fire chief Bob Whitman made two fairly significant recommendations. Our manager of public works, David Creaser, provided input, and of course the clerk's department, myself, Judy led the meetings. And so this is a culmination of all that effort is what you see before you. And I won't go through the memo in detail because I'm sure you've read it, but it outlines some of the changes, the majority of the changes that are significant. There were housekeeping updates that really don't change the bylaw significantly, but the things that you would see were different. You know, clear bags, we no longer accept tires. We no longer have fees in the bylaw because that's in our fees and charges bylaw. Talked about we don't accept cash, we only accept debit. We updated a good number of definitions. And we talked a little bit about site operations. Of course, we have CCTV close cameras at the landfill sites. And a number of other items that have been added to the bylaw. So I'm happy to take questions, as is I'm sure the two councillors that participated, maybe Chief Whitman with regard to his recommendations. So and our deputy clerk is here as well. So over to you for any questions or comments on the new bylaw.
Is it possible to sort of highlight what is substantially different between this bylaw and the current one? Or are there too many things? Like,
well, there are quite a few things. I did name a few. Some of the things that certainly aren't going to be controversial that the council would take issue with is the fact that we no longer accept cash. We have mandatory recycling, which allows us to enforce the clear bags. With the clear bags, we allow for a medical exemption. We know that council previously approved brush and construction and demolition debris only at Ald's Road, so the bylaw encompasses that direction from council. The update of the definitions is not particularly, but it provides clear definition of what, and we've added definitions as well. I would say in terms of something that is new and council may want to discuss is our fire chief had suggested no smoking or vaping at the landfill sites, and that's for fire protection. We've suggested children under the age of 12 may not exit vehicles, and that's for safety. You see that sometimes where there's little people running around. We don't want animals exiting vehicles. That happens once in a while, but we want people to keep their dogs in their vehicles, and that's for the safety of our other people using the landfill site and our landfill attendants. We've maintained, another item that was per our Chief Whitman was no hot or cold ashes at the landfill site. Up until now, our landfill attendants have accepted cold ashes, and Chief Whitman is suggesting we don't accept what someone perceives as cold or hot ashes. So that's been built into the bylaw. As I said, recycling materials are mandatory. We talk about bag tags and the waste exemption, as I said, and I think I've covered the highlights of the changes to the bylaw. We've continued to have a list of recyclable materials, and there was some updates to that recently. And
Okay,
maybe, I don't know if either one of the councillors who participated in this discussion would like to jump in if I've missed any of the key discussion areas that we've had, or maybe Deputy Clerk Meyntz could pick up something that I've left off.
Okay, if there's anything else that anybody would like to highlight at this point, we can do that. Otherwise, we can entertain questions and comments as well.
Mr. Mayor, could I lead it off a bit? I never moved the motion, but
Go ahead.
I'm not interrupting with who moved the motion. I have a couple of issues since the last review, and one pertains to the cards, which has been brought to the surface just big time in the last week, and the other one is, or one of the other ones is with respect to the discharge of firearms and hunting in proximity to landfills. So those are a couple of items. The ashes, I thought we had resolved that ashes could be put into a container, a controlled container type situation, so people could take their ashes to the landfill. Ashes can be a big deal for people who do year-round burnings, keep their homes with wood. Where they put them, I guess that's fine if you have a large enough property, but not everyone has property suitable to dump ashes. So I thought the landfill was an alternate to that. So if I could go back to maybe the hunting one first, and I know we've had advice from a couple of different people, one being a bylaw enforcement officer and the other being Paul Gray's lawyer for legal opinion. And some of us have since discussed this with OPP, with I've had an occasion to talk to a conservation officer, and I'm not sure where the 1,000-meter rule of no discharging and hunting within the landfill site comes from. Like 1,000 meters, 300 feet is a very, very big number. The MNR, they do have some policies and restrictions on where you can feed bears, hunt bears. Feeding the bears is like you're putting out bear baits and then culling the bears on an organized hunt scenario. They have a 400-meter rule that thou shalt not be within 400 meters of a landfill if you're putting out bear baits and hunting bears. That's one specific item on the hunting side of it. The other one that really I don't understand is where 1,000 meters, within 1,000 meters of a landfill, you cannot discharge a firearm. That's a landfill and or transfer disposal facilities. I think this all falls under the jurisdiction of the Ontario hunting regulations as an MNR and OPP. It's well documented. The rules are set. Safe hunting practices are met, all that kind of thing. I'll use York Street as an example. From the corners of York Street, 1,000 meters takes in the width of about 2 full 100-acre lots to the north, and it goes back 3/4 of the lots heading west, and it does a similar thing on the east. So the people who own those properties and have traditionally used them for hunting, I don't know a lot of heavy rifle sort of discharge hunting that happens in those properties, but to hunt grouse, maybe duck hunting or things like that where you discharge with shotguns, I don't see it any imminent danger to anyone within the landfill site locations. So I would move on that one, that we leave the regulation of the firearms up to the regulatory bodies, being the MNRF and say the OPP if there's an issue of any nature, which there certainly hasn't been to date. So that's one that I feel really very strongly about, and I've had some input from several people who are quite concerned. And apparently the 1,000-meter rule was in the previous bylaw, and I don't think anyone in sitting council and almost in community understand and realize that that 1,000-meter rule is in place. And when they find out about it, gosh, almost everybody that hunts within proximity of Dunchurch has been hunting illegally if you're within 300 or 3,000 feet, say, or 1,000 meters of a landfill site. So I think we've got some unnecessary wording in there, and I'm not sure where it comes from. So maybe we could take that one back for further investigation. But that's my take on that one. Now, I don't know if I should be the one to lead into the cards or not.
If I can just interject about the cards, there is a second item, 15.5, the next item on the agenda, dealing specifically with the cards. So I wonder if we could.
Okay.
If maybe we should just defer that for the next. It's not defer it from this discussion until we get to 15.5. Is that okay?
I don't know if other councillors have some input on the topic I just discussed on the firearms.
Well, I could talk to that if you like, Joe. We actually really agreed on that one there. Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. When Joe and I caught the 1,000-meter rule in the last review that we did, we were both ultra surprised. I mean, realistically, I've been breaking the law since I came here at my property over near Elds Road, if the 1,000-meter rule is in effect. And I think it is way too much that we're trying to do with that ruling. Like Joe had said, I mean, I myself, I'm a hunter, and I know within 400 meters of any landfill site, you can't bait bears or hunt bears. And every hunter that I know up here that I spoke to, they all said, yeah, no, you can't do that. But no one was aware of 1,000-meter rule. I think it's way overkill. There would be a heck of a lot of people that are avid target shooters and hunters that would be affected by this. And some of them out near they have very large tracts of land that's the reason that they bought them was to hunt and shoot on those properties. Yeah, I definitely think there needs to be more investigation in that one. If not, we just change it back to what the MNRF holds as regulation for bear hunting.
I guess, well, sorry, I should ask, before I comment, I'll ask if Councillor Gorham Matthews has any comments about the it seems to me there are two sections. We're talking about section 9.12, are we?
912 is the main section with 1,000 meters, yes.
But there was a reference to bears somewhere, and that's not in 912. Am I right or wrong?
There was.
Is that the only one?
I believe that's the only reference to hunting in it presently, Mr. Mayor. Bears are not included in here, but it was in the old one, the previous bylaw.
Okay, well, if there's no other comment about this, I would simply well, I guess I'm trying to understand what 912 says. No person shall discharge a firearm within 1,000 meters of a landfill site, waste and transfer disposal facility. I don't know. Landfill sites not, oh, it's landfill site and transfer disposal facilities, I think is the right title for this, but anyway. The word waste and don't need to be in there. Without the consent of council and for the purpose of dealing with nuisance animals. So that doesn't stop anybody from hunting if they're not doing it with well, I don't know, it's hard to say. I wish somebody could speak to the intent of this, but I'll tell you what my issue is. A 22 long bullet will penetrate a 1-inch board at a mile. Any of you who have taken firearms training will have heard this before. And it's actually true. I've proven it to myself. So you do not want people, whether they're target shooting or actually hunting, you know, with they wouldn't be using 22 for that, but actually hunting something or just shooting squirrels or whatever they're doing, within where there's a possibility that the bullet could enter the bounds of the landfill site while the landfill site is in operation. That seems to me the case. And by the way, we have had complaints from owners of private property over on the in the vicinity of Ald's landfill site, that area of the township, of people discharging firearms carelessly. And what they were doing was they were doing target practice shooting at cans on posts and things. But the concern was that the the bullets could easily be going into the neighboring, there's a trailer park there. And there are people with residences there and so on. So I guess the question is, how do you ensure that there is, if somebody is actually doing that, how do you stop them? Because the MNR has no power to stop them unless they're actually hunting, doing something that is covered under hunting regulations. And for the OPP, it's, they have to attend while the person is doing it and observe that they're, that they're careless discharge of a firearm and that sort of thing that are offenses. So it's, I'm wondering if that's where this came from. I don't know, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know why there's the reference to disposal of nuisance animals. It seems to me if the council asked someone to come in and remove nuisance animals, then they would be empowered to do whatever the council asked them to do, regardless of what the bylaw said. But I think the bylaw is supposed to be covering people who aren't authorized by council to do whatever it is. So can anybody help me out here? I just don't, I don't understand where this is coming from. We don't really understand what the intent is.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I could add, I'm fully aware that a rifle, and they're much heavier and farther shooting rifles than 22s.
Yeah, I know.
When I talked to a couple of OPP officers, they are very respectful of hunters generally. I don't know of an instance where someone has been shot just randomly or by accident in Dunchurch area in Whitestone. Maybe someone headhunted and took a shot at somebody or did something, which is a whole different deal. That's outside the realm of hunting. But responsible hunting and organized hunting is not considered to be dangerous by the OPP, the MNR, or the hunters at large. If someone sets up a target and shoots in toward the landfill, well, that's pretty much a no-no. And I don't ever know of that happening, and I can't foresee that happening. If a distance from the edge of a property, well, supposing you don't want people hunting on your property, you put up no hunting signs. Now you have a legal right, if someone is infringing on your property with firearms, to bring in the OPP or the MNR, and they could be charged. If it's open land that you hunt on yourself and you allow people to hunt on under controlled environment and basis, then so be it. That's your prerogative. What we're looking at here is the fact that a landfill is kind of in the middle of 600 acres type thing, and it's restricting many landowners within 1,000 meters in particular of doing what they've always done. Not knowing that there's this 1,000-meter rule, and the 1,000-meter rule to me is known now, and people should be aware, so they're not contravening unknowingly, that they cannot discharge or use a weapon on their own property within 1,000 meters of a landfill site. So, anyways, there's lots of arguments. If you go to the advocates for non-hunting or the advocates for hunting, you'll get some very different opinions on it, of course. I don't want to get into that kind of scenario. I think we have the rules in place through the MNR to actually deal with any issues that could come along without putting a distance regulation or ruling on this.
Well, I'm sorry to challenge you on that one, but I don't think there is anything under hunting regulations to stop anybody from hunting on a landfill site. What authority do you think the MNR would have to stop anybody from?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to have to correct you there. You're not allowed to hunt on a landfill site. That's part of the hunting regulation. You're not allowed to bait animals within 400 meters during bear season. You're definitely not allowed to hunt on a landfill.
Well, okay, but
And when it comes to
if we went to
responsible
the
shooters,
MNR, they would say it's your landfill site. You need to enforce it, not us. I think that's what I don't know.
I would feel under the firearms regulations. The MNR have the authority, and they would come, as with the OPP, if there's any kind of an infraction. They can ask for licenses, they can check your weapons, loaded, unloaded in certain locations, do all kinds of different checks on you to make sure you're conforming to the rules. So whether it's on a landfill site or on the adjoining private property, it's the hunting regulatory aspects of using firearms that we're talking about. So.
Well, okay, I guess we're not going to resolve this particular one, so I guess we should flag this as an issue to be followed up on. I'm only speculating about what I'm guessing the intent of this thing was, because keep in mind, as was pointed out earlier, it's been there all along. So are there other sections of the bylaw that you would like to raise questions about or dispute or whatever?
Mr. Mayor, this is the first time I've heard that there would be no ashes, cold or hot, allowed at the landfill site. I'm not sure what discussion or where that came from. I know it's from the.
Well, our fire chief is on the call. He could maybe respond, since I think this was his. I'm assuming it was his initiative. Bob, are you there? He may have walked away from his. Bob, you're muted if you're. I still see him on the participants list. There he is.
I'm here. Can you hear me now, George?
We can.
Or Mr. Mayor? Yeah, sorry.
We
Yeah.
can. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, I was asked about putting ashes at the dump, and I don't think it's a good idea. We actually had a car fire the other day where somebody threw some hot lumber, hot sticks of wood in their trailer and caught on fire. If you go to the Yorkville landfill site, you can see where they dumped the ashes right at the top of the rocks. They had talked about putting in a 45-gallon drum somewhere, but unless those ashes are checked and made sure they're extinguished at night, it's not a good idea. If we have a fire at either one of those landfill sites, it's going to be a huge concern. So my recommendation was no ashes whatsoever, and I was the one who brought that up.
So is there anything that you think people could do to ensure, like I take it you would not be concerned if the ashes were if you knew for sure that they were dead out, right? Is there anything that could be done to
yeah,
make
I'm
that
not
easy
sure
to
if you
determine?
could guarantee that they'd be dead out. I mean, we've had numerous car fires up there that people brought hot ashes that they said were out, and they've burnt the cars up. I mean, my recommendation is no, but you guys are in charge, so it's your call. But I would recommend no. And
so
I don't
Mayor,
recommend.
could I say?
What
I
does
don't
the
recommend-
person do? Sorry, what does the person do with the ash if they have ashes and they have a small property and they don't have any place to put them?
Well,
They
most
don't want
people
them.
have
They got more than they can use in their garden, or
the same thing most people do with the ashes in their fire pit.
Mr. Mayor, could I say something?
yeah, go
Councillor
ahead,
Woods.
please.
When Joe and I and the rest of the committee were having a meeting the one day, it's actually I brought this up about the 45-gallon drums. The reason I brought it up is because I was actually there when there was a small fire in Ald's Road dump the one day, and I called it in. And I just brought it to the attention of, I know there's a lot of 45-gallon drums that get brought in for recycling on a regular basis, and thought maybe we could use something like that. Now, I completely understand where our fire chief's coming from on this. But at the same time, my only worry is, if you get somebody that, say, rents one of the cottages that have a rental license agreement in the municipality, and it says in the rental agreement that you have to empty the wood stove after you leave. If people don't have somewhere to take them, my fear is that they would throw them in the backyard and then get back in their car and drive back to wherever home is, right? And we could have a fire there. I'm wondering if anybody knows, Bob, maybe you can give me an answer to this one. Is there any kind of maybe like a fire safe container? I know I've seen, like the bear safe garbage can kind of idea, something like that for ashes, where it wouldn't be located near the hill or the dump where people would throw their garbage over, and it could be, placed towards the front of the dump, just a container you dump it in and like a lockdown lid on it. Would that be something we could maybe look at?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of anything like that. I can look, but I've never heard of anything like that. I think it's too much of a risk to have people, because if somebody comes in there at 4:30, 4:45, and like you say, they've just dumped out the ashes and they throw them in the dump, the landfill attendants close the dump, they go home. It smolders in the dump, similar to what happened at Alds that day. We have a fire, and we have a garbage fire. And yes, if they throw it out in their backyard, we're going to have a fire there. So I guess it's up to council and what they want to do.
What
And
if
I
you
will
were,
check to see if there is a fireproof thing, but I'm not aware of one. But that doesn't mean there isn't one.
what if you were to use just an ordinary metal dumpster bin? I mean, they're pretty heavy metal. If it was sitting on gravel and you said you have to put it in there, it's got a steel lid that comes down. When they close the dump site, the landfill site, they bring the lid down on it. And before you dump it, you let it sit for a while, make sure it's out. Or you pour water on it, or you do something.
My suggestion, and I'm sticking with it, is they're still going to bring ashes from wherever they are to the landfill site, and that still causes a hazard if it takes their car on fire. So, I mean, they still have to take the ashes, even though they think they're out, from wherever they are to the landfill site. That, to me, is not a good idea. So my opinion and my recommendation is no, but it's council's decision.
Okay, thank you.
While I'm here, I just have two more. I just have a quick question, if I may, if I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah, you are. Go ahead.
I have a question where it says sharp objects. Does that mean you're not allowing people to dump sharp objects in the thing, or does it mean you can? It just doesn't say whether you can or can't, unless I missed it.
It says you can't put them in the metal waste bin, which is 5.6I. I don't know if it says it anywhere else, but.
So you are allowed to dump those items, correct? That was,
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if Judy wants to jump in. She dealt with this, but what we're saying is the metal sharp objects need to go in the metal waste bin. And I think that needs to be fixed, because we don't have a metal waste bin anymore. We pile our metal on in a pile. But in other words, we don't want it in the landfill proper. We don't want it as part of recycling. Any sharp object needs to go with the metal collection, in the metal collection space.
okay, cool. So I'd like to make a recommendation that you get a sharps container for up there to put syringes and stuff in, not just throw them in the metal container so nobody gets poked, even the people that come to get the metal. Because you can't just dispose of syringes. You just can't throw them out. They have to be disposed of in a proper manner.
Yeah. I'm going to let Judy speak to that, because that was discussed and that wasn't the intent of this. And you're right, perhaps that can be better described. But I see Judy's taken her mute off. If you could speak to that, please, Judy.
Thank you. Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. We do not allow any kind of surgical or needle sharps. It clearly states in the objects that are not allowed is anything with pathogens or sharps that would normally go into a sharps bin and be returned to your pharmacy. Those are not allowed in our landfill. What we're referring to when we talk about sharps going into the metal is like lawnmower blades and just different metal objects that could potentially hurt somebody. They cannot go in the landfill. They need to go in the metal recycling. But
Okay.
pathological sharps are not allowed at the landfill.
Perfect. That's great. And where does it say that again, Judy?
What?
Sorry, what section?
In the schedules, there's A and B.
Okay, I'll look it up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, sorry, I'm gonna stop you. There is a definition in the definition section. It is at the bottom of page 83 of 160. It says sharp objects includes broken glass. Are you gonna put broken glass in the metal bin? A razor or other blade, sewing needles, syringes, clinical glass, knife, scissors, straight razor, screws, nails, axe, hatchet, lawnmower blade, and the like. So if you have broken glass, the broken glass can go in the compactor that takes glass, right? I mean, when the people throw stuff in there, it gets broken. You can't, as Judy just noted, you can't put syringes or I don't know about clinical glass, but you can't put syringes in anywhere. But this is all stuff that that you're saying you have to place it in the metal waste bin, and we don't even have a metal waste bin. So I'm only saying this is an item that I think needs to be tidied up somewhat, right? No?
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yes, thank you. I've noted that. We'll send it back to the committee. Yes, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I do recall, sharp objects, that's just the definition of sharp objects. It's not the description of where you dispose of those sharp objects. So it probably could use a little bit of a revisit. You're right.
But look at item 5.6I, Councillor McEwen. It says every person entering a landfill site and transfer disposal facility shall place sharp objects in the metal waste bin.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It needs some touch up here. That doesn't cover all the sharp objects.
Okay.
Yeah, especially when we don't have a metal bin, waste bin. So
yeah.
Could I go back just for a second to the ashes one there? The recommendation actually did come from the landfill side of the fence on putting ashes in a couple of different metal containers, having 45-gallon drums or something that was on a pivot so you could dump it when they cooled down, but doing it in a controlled fashion at the landfill site. So there was a fair bit of discussion around taking ashes to the dump, as I recall. Personally, I burn wood all winter, and I take probably once a month a container. I have a metal container with a top on it, which I keep in my garage, so it's not venting into the house, because I take them out quite hot lots of times, and I set it in a safe spot. And when they're totally, after a week or so, dead, I take them to the dump. So I don't know what Bob's referring to when he says people are having car fires. Are they taking them in cardboard boxes or something? Like a little bit of common sense can go a little ways too. So I'm not sure. Like we're not dumping ashes into a wooden collection section of a landfill or brush at York Street, for instance, up on the rock pile at the far end of the household trash. I know we don't want to have fires in there, but the chances of it would be pretty minimal in my opinion. But if that's what council wants to do, say no ashes at the dump period. Because as you alluded to, there are some very small properties around, and I'm not sure where people continually put their ashes. If you've got, 45-gallon drums of ashes in a given year, that becomes a bit of an issue for people. So anyway, I can live with it either way personally. Just a little information history-wise on where that concept of a container at the landfill came in. Councillor Woods, he'd suggested that also, and that was in cooperation with talking to people. So anyway, onward. Thank you.
Okay, is there something else? We're just looking kind of for things that need to be revisited that people have issues with. Go ahead, Councillor Woods.
I flipping through this, I caught a couple of things when I started to read the agenda. The one section 5.6, every person entering a landfill site and transfer disposal facility shall. A, the very last two words, or otherwise. Why or otherwise? Because it reads, save and hold harmless the municipality, its contractors, agents, and employees from any damage or claims whatsoever to themselves or their property, or to any person or property whatsoever, whether arising from such person's negligence or otherwise. So, or otherwise, if somebody, tripped and fell, that they couldn't do anything about it, or, if I'm driving through, I drop my garbage off, I swing around, and I'm throwing some construction waste out at Ald's Road, and I run across a piece of wood that has a nail in it, and I pop my tire. Is this just saving us from trying to pay for that kind of stuff? And is this in the existing bylaw, this clause here?
I don't know. Somebody, can somebody answer this question?
The main reason I'm asking, I mean, we're trying to hold ourselves from liability, and I can understand that, but do we do this for the beach, or any, our one patch of sidewalk that we have? If someone's walking down and there's a crack in the sidewalk, they trip and they fall and they hurt themselves, they legally can hold us liable, right, and sue us for it. If we're entering into anything that the municipality owns, operates, or manages, and somebody hurts themselves, we're technically liable.
Mr. Mayor, it's CAO. I'll check into this. I believe that wording came from Paul Dre, and we'll come back with an explanation of how that is interpreted.
I have a couple more if you want me to go ahead, Mr. Mayor. Up to you.
Yeah.
One that I myself have had a problem with. I mean, I've stated this from day one when we started talking about redoing the bylaw, and I know there are a great number of people in our community that have a problem with it, is the no salvaging anything whatsoever from the dump. The way that I was taught, and the way I interpret the 3 R's of recycling, is they're in matter of importance, the way that they're stated. So the first would be reduce. We're supposed to reduce our consumption of goods that come in unneeded packaging. And the next one would be reuse. And then finally, it would be recycle. That we can't reuse, we recycle it. And going with that, I know there's a great number of people that take the odd thing out of the metal pile. Now, I'm not suggesting that someone goes climbing through the metal pile where they could hurt themselves, but if there's something that's of use to somebody else, traditionally people have put it to the edge of the metal pile. And, someone could go in and say, oh, why is that there? And the attendants normally would say, well, it works. You're free to take it if you want. I don't see a problem with this, even when it comes to, lumber. With the price of lumber today, you most definitely would see somebody want to pick up, you know, a 2x4 or 2x6 that was in good shape, that's just tossed into a pile that we're going to burn once or twice a year. And I've had a good number of calls from quite a few people about this. Some of them I know personally. Some of them I've never met before in my life. I was just wondering how everybody else felt about this.
Any comments about that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I can say from experience as well that, you know, I know a number of landfills have an area set aside where things that are still of value to someone are set aside. I know McKellar has a tent, and I believe Carling has a tented area as well, that things that, you know, don't strictly need to go into the landfill can be reused rather than just thrown out. So, you know, I'd like to see that kind of as a future area that we explore as well. You know, I can admit that my husband's come home with some crap from the dump too. So, you know, there is things that are valuable to someone that's able to repair things and use parts off things. You know, that, you know, I think it's worth exploring that. We shouldn't be so restrictive in some of our wording here in making it such an illegal act to reuse things from the landfill.
Yeah, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor, I could comment on that also. I've had comments from folks too who used to pick up the odd thing at the dump, whether it be, as Councillor Wood said, a piece of 2x6 or something that's perfectly sound and good for reusing. It might be something as simple as making some raised flower gardens or whatever. And then the other items are things like lawnmowers and things that I hope someone wouldn't all of a sudden decide that they're going to make a living out of taking goodies from the dump that way. But years ago, we had a situation or a location up there where we had one bin, and beside the bin, they would park stuff for maybe 1 week and then dispose of it after that, or at least gave people an opportunity to work a little bit in tandem with the attendants and be able to pick off some reusable items. And I think there were lots of reusable items going out of that dump at one point in time, and there still could be. And I still go back to the building materials. Building materials are very costly, as Councillor Woods mentioned, and I'm sure it would help some people considerably if they could have access to some of that. It's something that would have to be organized in a controlled fashion, areas established, and some parameters with the employees, of course. I think it'd be something worth looking into.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
it's probably worth exploring this further. What the no scavenging really is intended for, not, and I know our employees, our landfill attendants do from time to time set things aside that they see could be of value to someone. So that continues. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. What we need to avoid from a liability perspective is people mining the scrap metal pile. Because we've made it very clear, whatever comes into the landfill site belongs to the municipality. So people mining through the scrap metal pile and people, you know, climbing over things, you know, possibly getting hurt. And our landfill attendants can't watch what's going on. They can't have their eyes all over the place. So I think that there's probably a middle ground here where materials or items that are in good shape can continue to be set aside by our landfill attendants when they come across them. And people actually give things to the landfill attendants and say, you know, set this on your picnic table, someone will want it. What we want to avoid is people coming in, during hours and after hours, as I understand happens sometimes, and just going through our scrap metal pile, which is revenue for the municipality. And it also could create a situation where someone could get hurt. And that has been the experience of other municipalities. But I'm happy to take this back and give some thought to something that creates a bit of middle ground, that creates some safety and confidence for the municipality, but also allows for the reuse of items that appear to have some value.
Okay, thank you for that comment. That was pretty much what I was going to say. I recognize the fact that people can usefully reuse some things that are in the landfill site. But I think it's the question, there are various questions around sort of who, gets first dibs at it, and what is the process of making sure that you don't have people sort of actively scavenging the dump. And there are some things that get put in there that might be might be channeled through the thrift shop, for example, or some things of value that people could resell and get a small amount of money for, or whatever. So I don't know. I think there's some opportunity to think about a process for handling that is somewhere in between. It's free for all, and no, you can't do it at all ever. We spent a fair bit of time on this. I'm just going to do, I think, a last call on this one. If there isn't anything else, we should probably move on to the next item and keep going. But are there any other comments that you want to raise at this particular point in time?
Well, I have one quick one, Mr. Mayor. 8.2 under recyclable materials. I don't think we should have that in there at all. A person that does not remove the refrigerant. The reason I'm saying that, all my years in Hamilton, when I used to run scrap, I knew a lot of guys that would simply cut the lines on a fridge or a freezer, and then it would release the freon into the atmosphere. So if anybody that brings anything that would have a freon unit should be paying for it, whether the freon's taken out or not, because the person that takes it out would have to be a licensed contractor to do that.
Okay.
I just don't want to see
you.
people, breaking lines off and releasing it into, and then say, well, that way I don't have to pay, right? It's just a free drop off now because there's no freon in the unit.
Yeah, I see your point. Any comments about somebody just?
Yeah, that was me. I was about to say, I see your point. I don't know if we're on the same wavelength, Mr. Mayor, but I see in reading that how it could be misinterpreted, Councillor Woods. So as I've said on other items, leave it with us. And you're right, that needs a bit of adjustment so it doesn't get misused.
Mr. Mayor, is it something we could consider dropping the fee on, period? Is it not lucrative when you venture, or is it possible? Something else to look at?
Our fees and charges bylaw speaks to the fee of the refrigerant, and it costs the municipality to have someone come in and do that removal. It seems to me it's more how this is worded, and you're right, Councillor Woods, it could be perceived that a person that does not remove the refrigerant, and a person really isn't, most people aren't qualified. So that wording in itself is misguided. So if you can leave it with us, we can fix that.
Yeah, I guess I would be, as somebody who does in fact know how and have the equipment to remove the refrigerant. I'm just wondering how many people actually, like how much of this we get. I mean, sometimes when you go to service a unit, the refrigerant is all gone out of it, usually because it has a leak and it's escaped into the environment already. Whatever people think about that, it's the horses have left the barn. So there's no refrigerant to capture in the thing at all. But I guess, you know, somebody competent would have to determine that. You know, it's not. So I don't know, if you bring a refrigerator, you pay a fee because, or you pay a unit that has refrigerant in it that was designed to have refrigerant in it. Even if somebody decided to take the compressor out and put it and move it into another unit, it'd still say, well, it one time had refrigerant in it, so we're going to charge you. And I don't know, like, I'm just, it's a matter of, you know, of getting clarity. And usually, by the way, when they get to that point, they are effectively scrap metal. Okay, nowadays, very, very few people, like there was a day when we would take a refrigerator that was leaking and you know, they used to leak through the evaporator in various places. We'd solder up the holes in the evaporator so that, and recharge it, right? No, hardly anybody does that anymore. Maybe if you have a fridge like that dies on you and they call the service person, they'll say, well, time to buy a new one. Anyway, but I don't know how many of these we're getting. I noticed that I see there's a fair number of refrigeration units sitting there. So
The just so you know, the part of our scrap metal contract for the removal of scrap metal and the revenue we get, they also supply a person that's licensed and qualified to remove the freon, and they tag, and a vehicle and a refrigerator unit is tagged when the freon is removed.
So if they had a tag on, if there was a tag on it, then you wouldn't charge them, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
that the way around?
Yeah.
Maybe.
That's right.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap this one up if it's all right. We're obviously we're gonna have to come back to it again, but I don't want to. We're marching towards 9:30, which is our curfew. So we already had a part of the meeting before. I was just gonna say there is a whereas that says. Oh, okay. All right. Never mind. Don't worry about it. I'm going to leave it.
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
in this resolution that we haven't passed yet, it says with the following suggested refinements. I'm wondering if we could have a blanket statement as just, I have them listed on my sheet, which I will do in the final resolution. But for the purposes of passing the resolution, we could say as communicated and discussed with staff, something to that effect.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, it says receives the draft bylaw for information and provides the following I don't know, suggested refinements. I was just going to list the areas where where they were, and they were basically, if we go back, there was the no discharge of firearms within 1,000 meters. There was the matter of ashes being dropped at the land site. There was the matter of the
reuse
The
material.
scavenging, no scavenging, and there was the Freeland. Did I miss one? Is that what you have in your notes, Madam Clerk?
I'm just double checking here. It's discharge fire ashes. Yes, I think that we have covered the main issues. Would you, did we capture all of your concerns, Councillor Woods and McEwen?
Madam Clerk, we never touched on number 6, which is the landfill access pass, which was another.
We're coming to that one yet still. We have to do
Right,
it.
okay, it's all under the same umbrella though, so.
Right,
landfill.
so if something comes of the discussion on the next item, we're still going to have landfill pass cards. It could be what's recorded in our fees and charges bylaw that changes, as opposed to the fact that we need landfill access cards. But either way, that will be attended to once a decision is made on the next item. We won't forget
Okay.
that one.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, there was one other item that I have listed. It's section 5.6A, the words "or otherwise" being reconsidered in the liability clause.
Oh, okay. There was another one. I'm sorry. I didn't know what it was too. And that was the 5.6I, which was sharps.
Right.
Sharps objects, or sharp objects, I guess is what. Because we're not just talking about medical sharps, we're talking about, okay. So there's actually, that's 6 things. So I have 6 things on my list underneath the suggested refinement, and they're just areas to go back and revisit. So we do have a motion on the floor, which is basically to receive this and discuss it. Can I declare the motion carried? Are you okay with that? It comes back with those after further work on those 6 things.
Okay with me.
Councillor Woods, you're the seconder.
Sure. Yeah. No,
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
All right, thank you very much. Good discussion. I just want to keep us moving here. Now, the next one was 15.5, had to do with the landfill passes. And if I can summarize my understanding, and maybe somebody will correct me on this, but I think there are really 2 issues. There's the issue of people who have properties where there are, you know, like we have a hunt camp, for example. Let's raise this issue before, where people, it works like a timeshare. People come and they spend their couple of weeks and they leave, and they take their, it's water access only on Washkesh, this one I'm thinking of, and they take they drop their stuff at Alds on the way home. So this particular property has 2 landfill access cards. But the person who's on their way back to the big city isn't going to turn around, drive back from the dump to the landing, get in a boat, take the access card back to up to the hunt camp and turn it in, and then reverse the process and leave again. So their question was, how do we get the cards back, or how do we get more cards? And then there are other individuals who've complained because they weren't the owner of the property. The ratepayer got the cards. They're a tenant. I don't have a card, whatever. So there are various suggestions, and you've got a report there that says what different people do about this. I guess the question really is, what do we want to do about it? The order paper I have here, it said, look, request to use an electronic image or allow for the purchase of additional cards or whatever. And then, but there's no motion. It says that the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby, and then there's a blank space. I guess
if I
what
may,
we'd like to
we
do
did
is
that
have it.
we
have
did
it
that
dis-
purposely, Mr. Mayor, because we weren't sure how council would like to address this issue.
No, I know.
Okay.
But I'm saying, What would you like to put in the blank space, folks? By the way, it occurred to me, and I know this is a major revamp of the thing. We could use electronic permits like we do for fire permits. I mean, it's not, we'd have to set something up to do it. It wouldn't be no cost or anything, but I guess we could. People could prove with their cell phones that they had that they were the recipient of a permit, I guess, and or authorized to use the facility. We did get an email, some of you saw it, I guess, very recently from a ratepayer who's, well, she wasn't actually a ratepayer, she was a renter, I think, but she said, why do you charge people? You shouldn't charge people for this, but the owner of the property who is on file as the ratepayer, in fact, got two access cards that they didn't pay anything for. Question is, why didn't the tenant not get one? So I think that's a separate issue, and I don't think this particular person made an argument that, well, we shouldn't be bothering who's using the landfill site. I'm not suggesting that we want to revisit that subject. I think, the question is, how do we deal with people who have problems, need more permits for the number of users they have or whatever. So anyway, what does council, anybody have any, you've seen various suggestions that have been made here. Are there any that you'd like to propose?
Mr. Mayor, on the multiple owners and or campsites with multiple sites, those are two that were kicked around in a major way, and it has to be a real problem for people out there. The multiple owner thing, it could be just distance, wrong direction, on lakes, on islands, on all kinds of things. But to me, it doesn't matter if you have 5 owners. Why not give them 5 cards? Give them the one free card for the property, and they can purchase as many cards as they want, as long as each one is a proper owner of the property. If a campsite, the owner has 10 tenants or 20 tenants, give him as the owner a card, and each of the respective campsiters could purchase another card. The actual number of cards, I don't think would matter so much. We're trying to be more accommodating, I think, than we were maybe when we were putting this policy in place, in my mind, or at least I think we should be. So that's the multiple card scenario, in my opinion. If we have a tenant who is a permanent here and a permanent tenant, if that person has driver's license and verification of owner or living on that property year round, I don't see why we cannot give that person a card. That's a little different than short-term rentals and multiple use locations on some of these other properties. That's the one that came in hot and heavy this past week.
Yeah. And
I have to sympathize with people who were stressing out at this point in time with everything else that's going on around them. And let's face it, we're dealing with aging and older population here as well. And some people don't understand and don't appreciate some of the rules that we come down with. So I think we should be a little more lenient and sensitive to certain people's needs. Like a full-time resident, renter, or a property owner, to me, they still effectively pay the taxes, whether it's through their rent or paid directly to municipality. So I think we could break or head in a different direction on that one and support the person who is a full-time renter. So that's just a couple of my comments.
Okay, so if I can summarize your solution for the tenant, the long-term tenant, is to say, once she identifies herself to the municipal staff. I'm not saying at the landfill site, because I don't think we want landfill attendants to start looking at people's driver's licenses. And, you know, the purpose of having a card is say that the landfill attendants, if they want to verify that somebody is legitimate, they can do it easily. And I mean, there's ways around, like, let's face it. I mean, if you have a card, or if you have 2 cards, you can give a card to somebody who doesn't even live in Whitestone, and they could show up with the card, and the landfill attendant's going to accept it probably. But so it's not a perfect system, but at least it's, you know. So, but your suggestion was, well, the staff in the municipal office could simply give this lady who wrote the email to council, just give her a card and say, fine, here's your card, and enjoy, right? But what do you do if somebody needs, the question I had from Morton's Point, if any of you know about Morton's Point, they would need 24 cards. Now we could say to them, well, okay, you have to pay for those, but
Well, it could be a hunt camp up on the far end of Washcash Lake, and they have 20 members. Each one is an owner.
That's what Morton's Point is. Yeah.
If they wish to purchase 25 cards, I guess that's their prerogative. Why do we worry about 1 card, 6 cards, 5 cards, 2 cards? Like, I don't understand that one.
Okay. Anybody else comment on this?
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I don't know if I caught it correctly, but Councillor McEwen, correct me please if I got you wrong there. When it comes to trailer parks and campgrounds, the owner obviously would get one, but the people that are actually have their trailer in the trailer parks, they're not technically landowners or paying taxes. So I don't feel they should get a card. I mean, it might be an inconvenience for everybody, but the landfill and everything here in the municipality is paid for by the ratepayers' tax dollars, right? If I got you wrong on that one there, Joe, please correct me.
Well, their money is certainly going towards supporting taxes through their rental, their permits, or whatever camping costs they have. So it's all going into our coffers one way or another eventually. But I just see it real hassle if, say you have, especially the larger campgrounds where you have mobile homes basically set up, and they're seasonal from spring till fall. To have a card available and move the card or a couple of cards around from person to person when those people are coming to the landfill site every week or 2 weeks, I can see it being a real nightmare for the owner of the property. I just thought it might be a solution to not worry about the number of cards they get. Give them the 1 free card as the owner, and then charge each person the $15 for the second cards for those individuals on the property. Just a thought.
I guess the other thing too is that there are, like, we have a couple of trailer parks in the municipality. And my understanding is that the owners of those trailer parks actually collect the garbage from and recycling from the users of their facilities and deliver it to the landfill site. So in
Actually,
actual
Mr.
fact,
Mayor, sorry to interrupt you there. Go ahead.
Go ahead. So they're doing that as a service. So they probably have 1 card, but but a lot of people's garbage is going through that one particular thing. Am I wrong?
That's what I had originally been told, Mr. Mayor. The one trailer park, you and I actually both know the people. We'll just leave it at that. They actually don't bring anybody's garbage to the dump anymore since the COVID, and they're not going to in the future. They're leaving it up to the people in the trailer park to take it to the dump themselves or to take it home. To me, I mean, if you own the property here, or if you live here full time, this is, or, your address is here, you're living here, you should get a dump pass. But if you're in a trailer park, I'm sorry, but no. And the reason is you're not paying property taxes directly into the municipality. I mean, campers come up here and camp on Crown land, and we made a concession there where they could buy a bag tag for $5 to get rid of their garbage. And that was just so that we didn't, we give them an avenue to get rid of it rather than throwing it on the side of the road, right?
Okay. So that's your
That would be
is your
my
answer. Is
idea.
your answer to the question they should buy bag tags? Is that?
If you're in a trailer park, the owner, if he wants to take all of the garbage, then yeah, they would be allowed to do that. But if somebody else, they would have to buy a tag. Either that or the owner of the trailer park could give them their pass. But you get into a trailer park with 50 or 100 different people, maybe 2 or 3 people use the trailer. They're different families, so they get, a 50 trailer parks and 3 families. You could have 150 extra cars floating around. And none of those people are technically paying taxes. I mean, yeah, obviously they spend money here. They're community members. I understand that. But if you're not paying property taxes, and we're trying to put some restrictions so that we can lengthen the lifespan of our dumps, it is what it is. I don't see that they should get a dump pass.
Okay. Thank you. Well, Councillor Gorham Matthews, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I still support allowing people to buy additional passes. And if we keep them reasonable, then I don't think people will have cause to complain that they have to buy additional passes. I was contacted about this last year when the cards first came out, and I had talked to our CAO about it. The people had wanted to buy, or not buy, but they wanted to just take a photo of their card and then just show that for their multiple members. But it was just going to be too difficult to keep track of people sharing that and being able to verify that those passes were related to that property. So I think as long as we can justify the cost of buying the additional passes, that's what we should support. If you look at all the other municipalities, they're only giving out a few passes as well, and you have to purchase additional ones. So as long as it's not a money grab, that we can justify the expense that we're charging for the additional pass, I don't see why that's not justified.
Okay, so
Mr. Mayor, I can see Councillor Wood's point of view too. When there's so many different, I guess, different campground scenarios. You may rent 10 locations, 10 sites on a campground to mobile homes. The next person has tents and trailers and campers and pop-ups and just an ongoing whole lot of different issues, which all will generate garbage or stuff for the landfill. So it does become kind of tricky to say you can cover everyone with a card, unless someone's giving the card out on a take it today, bring it back, and give it back to me in an hour, and all that thing through a controlled situation. So it goes back to the responsibility on the owner. I don't know how many cards they should have in a large campsite, maybe multiple cards. I'm not sure on that point.
okay. What do we charge for an additional card right now? $20? Is that right?
15.
Oh, 15. That's not much more than the cost of the actual card itself, I'm guessing, right? They probably cost about.
Yeah.
Oh, I should ask our deputy clerk. What do they cost a piece?
Actually, the $15 included the cost of the cards and then the time and effort of staff recording it to that specific property. So it's a break even for basically the cost to sell it and to record it.
Okay, so I'm not hearing, thank you, Judy. I'm not seeing anybody saying, well, we should just tell people photocopy your card. And I'm not hearing anybody who wants to go to the trouble of putting an electronic system in place that. So what's our answer to the folks who are asking this? Is it, will increase the number of additional cards that you can get? Or no, you have to live with the cards that have been assigned.
Mr. Mayor, I think owners of the property should be allowed to get extra cards, like the analogy you spoke to there. You know, you got 20 owners to the property. If they want 20 cards, they should be able to get 20 cards. But when it comes to a campground kind of thing, no, the owner of the property, not everyone in the campground should be able to get a card. I don't think. I mean, maybe I'm way off, but that's how I see it.
Well, I come around to agreeing with you, Brian, on the multiples on campgrounds, because I hadn't been thinking of the real large campgrounds, which can be big deal. I'm wondering if Judy could comment on this. She's been our recorder on it, and I know we've had her go forwards and backwards and sideways in every direction on it. So what her take is on it.
Through you,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Thank you. So we did do some research in the beginning, and I don't think it's going to be an excessive amount of extra cards, but there are people who have the husband, the wife, and the grown children where they would really see a benefit by purchasing one more additional card with their one that they got free and then the one that they purchased. I think it would really speak to the community if we allowed owners to purchase as many cards as they feel they need. And again, it'll be a wash because the cost is covered.
Okay, thank you. I'm just wondering if somebody would move a motion like this, and I'm putting it down as we talk, but the Council of the Municipality of Whitestone does hereby permit owners of properties to purchase additional access cards now. Do you want to have do you want to put a maximum on it? Or do you want to just say put permit to purchase additional access cards as required pursuant to the fees bylaw? Is that? Okay, go ahead. I'm looking for comments. Would somebody like to move something like that?
That would be my pick, Mr. Mayor, for property owners. That would allow 6 owners on a property to have cards, or the one principal owner to purchase more cards. It would give them 1 card free for that property, or one card free. Is that what you're coming at?
Yeah, I'm just saying as required. So if you are an owner of a property and you can well, and even if you have,
I kind of thought, sorry to interrupt, I thought we were leaning towards that all the property owners would get a card and then they could purchase additional cards for additional family members that use their property. Because the main thing I think we were leaning towards is that if there's 4 owners for a property, then all 4 owners should each receive a card. But say they want to get a card for, their grandkids when they come up and they're not there, then they would have to purchase that additional card.
Well, yeah. I guess historically, though, we've had, like, for example, a typical property. I don't know if there is, if you can generalize like this, but a typical property is owned by, say, a husband and a wife. So there's two people that own it. So you're not going to give a card for each one of those two people, are you, or are you? I mean, we gave them, we said that's one property, you get one card. Now, if you have multiple people on the way these things work is you have, like, even your hunt club that you're talking about, it's an association. So people have shares in the association. And, you know, you could, so if you would have to go look up the ownership, that would require staff to go up and look up who the owners are. So what do you do if the property is owned by a family trust that has 4 trustees? Do they automatically get 4 cards? I guess what I thought we were doing is we're saying, okay, you get 1 card per property that you can purchase additional, and it's not just one additional one, which is what the bylaw says right now, but you could purchase additional ones as required, but you would still have to keep, you'd still have to pay the $15 for the additional cards. If you want, like, let's use Morton's Point as an example, if you want 10 cards, they'd have to purchase, they have to pay $150 to get the cards, but then they could share them out amongst people. And in theory, when the people went home, they could mail the card back to the you know, to some central point or whatever, and put it back into circulation till next year. Is that where we're going, or?
That would be my take on it, Mr. Mayor, that you get 1 free card and you're purchasing additional cards as necessary. If we get into trying to supply cards because it's 5 different owners and getting those names all involved and giving them free cards, I think the logistics of it starts getting kind of hairy. So
the motion, the suggested motion I have is simply this, and I stopped writing it. So it says that the council of the municipality of Whitestone does hereby permit owners of properties to purchase additional landfill access cards as required. So there's no mention of a limit. So essentially all we're doing is removing the limit. Would somebody like to move that? Is that?
I would move that.
Okay, is there a seconder?
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I heard Councillor Woods first. Any further discussion? No? Okay, if there's no further discussion, I will call I'll call the question on the motion, and anybody objects to passing this motion. Well, hearing none, guess we can consider it carried. Now we're almost done, but I'm going to ask our clerk, are we past time for a curfew motion? What's your, or not? Maybe, have we got till 10 o'clock?
Yes, one moment, please. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, we do have till 10 o'clock. We had 3.5 hours.
Yeah, all right, so we're good. We'll keep going. that brings us to correspondence.
Mr. Mayor, we left one little item kind of unopened on that, or opened up. I think that was the one where you have a tenant. Did we finally decide on what we want to do with that? A permanent tenant on a property? If he's identifying himself at the landfill as being a permanent tenant and he cannot get his card from his owner for various reasons, should we not just ask them to direct him to the office and have it worked out? And whether we sell him a card directly because he has the ownership, or pardon me, the property, living address and descriptive stuff and all that. Did we bypass this, or did I miss something?
No, you're right. We didn't. What I actually did was, when that message came in, it was circulated to councillors only. I forwarded it to our CAO, and I said to her, I thought perhaps that the lady who wrote the message to us was maybe not clear around what she, what the charging was for these things. But what I thought was going to happen was that the staff would reach out to this lady and say to her, okay, look, if they believe that she is the one who's entitled to the card, that they would simply send her a card, right, and or make it available to her. But I should ask our CAO clerk, because we didn't. I just forwarded the message and we didn't have any conversation.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Is that something that you would deal with administratively? Is my question.
Yes, we will deal with it administratively. Judy did reach out to this lady, and I think gave her a brief message and encouraged her to call. Judy had a number for her that was incorrect. So we will work out something at this end to assist. And those are one-offs, and we can certainly assist. We certainly wonder why the landowner didn't actually give them a card. But we'll help this person out. They may have to purchase a card, but that's if they're
Mr. Mayor, keeping in mind that this person is the messenger, not the person with the issue, I don't believe. However, I just think we should be sensitive to especially our senior citizen ratepayers, if they have an issue of any description. I know that got kind of volatile in different ways when instance last week. I appreciate that. But I think we have very few of these situations. So if we can handle them administratively with compassion, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So are you satisfied with that response then, Councillor McEwen?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a mover and seconder, please, that for this, whereas Council of the Municipality of Whitestone has reviewed the correspondence items listed on page 5 of the June 7th, 2021 Council agenda. Now therefore be it resolved that Council received the correspondence items for information with the following extracted for further discussion. We'll get a list of what those are. Please let me know. The ones I have are labeled from A to S. Can you advise if there are any in that list that you wish to pull for further discussion? Anybody? All right. Can I assume from the silence that nobody wishes to pull any? All right, so could I get a mover and second for this motion with no items extracted?
I will so move, Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Councillor McEwen, seconded by?
I'll second, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Woods. Go at my last call. If there's nothing, can we approve this motion? Anyone have any objection to approving the motion? Okay, it's approved. That brings us to councillor items. Maybe sorry, let me ask if councillors have any items that they wish to raise. I've got a couple.
I have a quick one, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
It's not actually mine. Councillor Lamb phoned me earlier on today and asked me if I could ask a question for him or bring something up. What it basically was he was asking about the staff parking down in front of the beach, in front of the offices. If anybody thought it would be a good idea, because he apparently thinks it's a good idea, to ask staff to park up towards the community center during the summer months when we're real busy, just to allow people parking access to the beach area when they're visiting. That's all I can give you there.
Okay. Any response from our CAO?
He did actually specifically say if it was, someone was coming in and they had to pick up paperwork and they were leaving within, a half an hour or an hour, that no, they should be allowed to park out front. But if, staff's going to be there all day, if it would be feasible to ask them to park up at the community center to open up the parking area for everybody to use the beach.
Any response to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was something the staff typically did during the summer months, during swimming lessons. Obviously, there was a heck of a lot of traffic down here. If that's council's wish, I will advise staff accordingly.
I don't know, other people's comments, other councillors.
I was under the impression that staff parked around behind the fire hall area during the summer.
No, staff park in front of the Dun Dome, typically.
The only other place that there is parking, or might be parking, depending on what else is going on in the community center, is the community center. Am I correct?
In the past, we have parked, like I say, during swimming lessons at the liquor store, and out of the way of their delivery trucks, and they haven't seemed to mind us doing that. There's not a lot of room at the nursing station, and you're right, there is an option at the community center since there's really no activities going on there. Just a water pickup, and occasionally people park for internet use.
Well, I guess it could be passed on as maybe as a suggestion, and see what have we noticed that there is in fact a shortage of parking from time to time on weekdays.
Certainly our beach is starting to be used more and more. I wouldn't suggest right now there's a shortage of parking, but it wouldn't surprise me as the weather gets warmer and the kids are out of school, that we'll find more and more people want to use the beach activity. So I'm happy to pass that request on to staff.
All right, well, let's treat it in that way, not to not to mandate it, but to let's pass it on as a request and see how that goes. Okay. Are there any other items that you want to bring up?
No,
Mr. Mayor,
I'm
I
okay,
just
Mr.
might
Mayor.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Woods.
Just one comment pertains to the announcement that was made today, both from federal and provincial governments. Funding for the Wellness Center project was announced, with the federal government contributing their full ask of $12.7 million and the provincial 10.6 million. So very pleasing for those who did so much work to bring it to this point so far. So I'm just going for the record on that. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's, I was going to mention that if nobody else did. I think it's a big day for those who have worked hard on the Pool and Wellness Center. Well, it's still lots of work to be done, but the external funding on which the project depended, in my opinion, has been committed and secured. So it's a big day. Anyway, the official announcement was made this morning. And there are materials that have been circulated to you. It was kind of a last minute thing. There was at 10 o'clock this morning, there was a press conference that was attended by, I guess, a relatively small number of people. We couldn't really see who was on it, but it was our MP and MPP spoke, as did the mayor of Parry Sound and the chair of the WCPC, which is Donald Sanderson, and it was a short meeting, but was attended by press, and there was some background material that was circulated afterwards to so that articles could be written about it and so on. And you have now seen all of that stuff. It was forwarded by our CAO. So I say you, the councillors, have seen it, and it'll go up on I'm assuming it will go up on our website, Madam CAO.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, could you repeat that? You'd like
No,
that?
I was just saying, I'm assuming that you will put the notice on our website and Facebook page
Of the
already.
of the announcement?
Yes.
We can do that. We hadn't, but we can do that.
Well, I'm sure that the public will be interested to find this out, and it'll
Yeah, for sure.
it
Yeah, I know
will be in
it's
the
on-
news anyway, but
Yep.
it's been reported already publicly. So
Okay,
but
I
the-
will make note of that for tomorrow.
The other thing I will mention is that we, at the moment, we have a meeting planned at Bolger Landing this Friday with representatives of the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, which and the reason it's with them is because they're immediately back from the property of the landing itself, which the municipality owns. As you follow back that trail in the bush that eventually joins up to the Clear Lake Road, you enter into the Wawashkesh Nayscoot Conservation Reserve. So it's not like ordinary Crown land that the MNR is responsible for. This is MECP, and they had a concern about the fact that people were parking. It's a typical landing problem that we've been dealing with at Wawashkesh for some time. People were parking, leaving boat trailers and vehicles and so on the conservation reserve, which they were not happy about, which contravenes some of their rules. But in any case, the purpose of the meeting primarily is to look at possibly expanding the parking area, or at least making some provision to allow people to park boat trailers and things on parts of the reserve, and trying to figure out where that would be. So it's an attempt at accommodation as opposed to enforcement by MECP. So And it's primarily an interest, a matter of interest to the folks who are ratepayers on Bolger and Kashagaba, because that's how they get to their property, basically, unless they have a plane. So I think that's all I would have by way of announcements. If there's nothing else, we could, I was going to say we could have questions from the public, but I do not see anyone from the public anymore on the list. So I guess there are no questions from the public at this point. The next thing we need to do then is to, next thing is the confirming bylaw. Mover and seconder, please.
I'll move, Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Seconded by
Second.
Councillor McEwen. That bylaw 23/2021, the confirmatory bylaw for the council meeting of June 7th, 2021, be given a first, second, third, and final reading and is passed as of this date. Any objections? Thank you, that's carried. Adjournment.
I'll make the motion.
Councillor Woods, thank you. A seconder.
I'll second.
Councillor Gorham Matthews, thank you. Now therefore be it resolved that this meeting be adjourned at 10:02 p.m. until the next scheduled meeting of council on Monday, June 21st, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. or at the call of the chair. Any objection? Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much, everybody, for your patience and perseverance, and the warm weather.
Yes, enjoy the summer, folks. Thank you. Take care.
Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
You too. Take care.